What is going on, guys? Welcome back. Commentary for you, Doug Flutie's Maximum Football off-season number 1 after winning the League Crawler Bowl. Learning as we go. We go into training camp and we have to assess how we're going to build this team. And right now, a lot of the team is not mine. I haven't personally recruited a lot of these players. Sure, we're getting there, but we're not all the way there. And I looked at where we were last year and where I felt like we could just be stable. And that's blocking and rushing and then overall player intelligence. And I chose to put 2 in those slots and 1 in everything else except physical training. And I don't know if this is a good idea or not. I don't know how weak this is going to make our team from a game planning standpoint, but I felt if we could get players strong and fast, then we would be in good position. When we go out and we look at recruiting, pretty much the last recruitment allotment that we have for the year is the bottom of the barrel players. And we talked about this a little bit on the last one as well. I don't know how much, these 400th, 500th players in the country are going to do and how much they can even bring to the table. I mean, certainly we immediately become one of their favorite objectives and targets, but we look at quarterback and going through these cuts here. Russell Cardarelli is going to be our senior this year, 86 overall. And then we kind of have an embarrassment of riches. Brandon Yearbank is going to be 87 overall. And even though Cartelli has the stronger arm, it leaves us with these players in terms of Syria, Spar, and Channel that are kind of in the middle. And they're not going to get playing time unless somebody gets injured. And we have to determine whether we want Yearbank to be the future at junior or Cartelli to be the senior that plays out one final year. I'm going to keep Spar because he is kind of the middle ground guy. And I think we need that backup quarterback no matter who we have starting. When we look at running backs, a lot of freshmen. Obviously, Elmquist was the stud last year, and there's no question he's staying. He did lose a little strength from last year to this year, but I was pretty disappointed in players that we recruited heavy like Stuber and Messman. We were really focused on these players, top 100 players in the country, and we have to let go of one of them. I'm going to choose to let go of Stuber. He just didn't have the speed and the strength combination, and you're not going to get there. The other thing that we have to make a determination on was Gick. I thought Gick was going to be one of the players we could depend on this year. And you hate to cut somebody at a senior, but I feel like we need to be young at this position, and unfortunately, we're going to have to let him go and then probably redshirt one of the 3 freshmen later. When we look at wide receivers, again, this is another position where we were kind of an embarrassment of riches, if you will. A lot of names from last year in terms of Fiegel we have to worry about not coming back as our dedicated kick returner. But when you look at the freshmen that we focused on, I mean, for multiple episodes, Miles Jessel and Tyler Dush, and I just don't think they're going to have the speed to make it in this league. And you have to also look at their size. So a player like Miles Jessel, who's only 5'11", I don't know if he's going to be able to make this team. I like those deep threats, the deep passes, the tall receivers. So we start to make those cuts right away. And then you have to go and look at players that we've carried from last year. I don't remember Kevin Rowers really contributing. We want to get younger players starting, so we're going to go ahead and let him go. And then also Chris Voas was a player that we kind of had to pick between him and Sobel, but Sobel played a lot last year, scored a lot last year, so that was kind of what the determining factor was. Even though Vonas is 6'5", I feel like that's going to trim down. We've got some good experience from players we can depend on, and moving forward to offensive line, you can see just a ton of players here up front just really had went hard and heavy on recruiting, especially the second half of the season when it came to offensive linemen. Jamie Pfeiffer, if you remember, was one of the only players that we had about 2 or 3 conversations with and just instantly committed. Almost surprised me when it happened. And you can see, really there's not much we can do with the skill set that he had. And a lot of these players fall in the middle ground. It looks like we're going to have traditionally guys from 82 up to 87 starting on the line. And I really had to focus on the strength and kind of weed out some of the weaker players. And I think when you look at when we go and train the strengths and we train the speed, you have to also make sure that you're keeping some of the stronger players there. So again, you look at getting rid of your lowest overall players, and then you kind of work backwards and let go of some of your weaker players. Even though I don't think we had truly any bad linemen here, It was just we had way too many of them, and you had to make kind of some difficult decisions, and you hope that you're making the right choices when you're letting some of these players go just based solely on the attributes. I think leaving out here with 8 linemen is going to be plenty, even if we do have to cut another senior here in Victor Tellino. So going forward from the line, we have to focus on the other side of the ball, and that's obviously defensive. When you look at our defensive line, we don't nearly have as many, but you look at some of the age problems that we have, a lot of seniors here. We only have 1 junior, and I think this is going to be something that we really have to consider when we start recruiting last year, but also getting rid of some of them now. I know it's, tough to let go of seniors their senior year of eligibility, but at the same time, we're trying to rebuild this team to a degree, and it starts with youth, and I think we're just going to have to redshirt, not seniors. A little bit of a mistake there, but we'll go back and redshirt some of these players, but I actually meant to cut him, so maybe he got excited and was like, oh, I'm going to redshirt. Oh, no, you're not. It's your last year. Why would I do that to you? Linebackers, another position where we remember Rybacki was one of the first ones also that committed right away, and I gotta say, I'm not all that impressed with the stats, but it seems like he would be serviceable. It leaves us in a position here where you look at players that have a good mix, but also some players that we have to get rid of. St. Louis was a decent linebacker. He actually made some plays for us last year, but to me, as a sophomore, just blends in too much with what else we have here, and I know we can build from the juniors and the freshmen, and really having that 2 senior leadership I think would pay off as well. When you go over to defensive back, probably our most stacked position. I played a lot of user control with your Poli. He's going to go into his sophomore year, so I feel comfortable there, but some of these players I just don't think have the speed. If you watched last year, we got burnt at, mid 80s in speed. So to have, Christian Peasley come out here with 79 overall speed, I just don't know what he's going to do on the field, rather than be a liability. And again, looking at what we're trying to do in terms of the mix of youth and rebuild, we kind of have to make some tough decisions here when it comes down to players that are on the lower end of the 80s. I feel like if we can put out a group of players that's between 83 to 85, then we're going to be in decent shape, especially if I can use your control in 81. So I think it was just that gradual overhaul of getting players, like Tyler Friesius, who's an 81 out, and then moving forward with players that are just a little bit higher quality in terms of building. Going forward, obviously, some of the positions we really didn't have a lot of focus on were tight ends. Obviously, if we're not set here, we have to be. The kicking and the punting was something we struggled with last year, but we do have 2 kickers here that we can take advantage of. We obviously have the 1 punter, and then moving forward, how we're going to redshirt players, pretty simple. It's going to come down to youth. I'm going to go ahead and put a redshirt on our wide receiver, Dush, that we followed much of the last year, and then we're going to go ahead. I'm not going to redshirt a quarterback. I know people would want to see that build and give him an extra year, but maybe further on, I'm going to go ahead and redshirt Panic as well. Matt Messman rather as well. He is going to be, I think, the best growth perspective that we have here out of these 3. So for that reason, I'm going to go with Messman, and then we're going to move forward and look at just one other position in terms of linebackers where we had a freshman there in Rybacki, guy that we're probably going to remember, and hopefully, can get him growing along the way. With that said, though, that wraps up pretty much the offseason. Love to know what you guys think about this. Appreciate you checking it out, and I will be back very shortly with more commentary.